have a very small group today, but that's okay. We're going to forge ahead, and I imagine we're going to have more stragglers coming in because I know we had about 20 or so RSVP. So with that, let's just kind of get started. You are at the BlokMeet meetup for anyone that has not been here before. We talk about all kinds of blockchain technologies and everything in between. So this month we're going to have James Whelan, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, from Alpha Point Technologies. It's weird. This one keeps like cutting in and out for some reason. And he's going to be talking about Hyplerledger Sawtooth. Very different. Okay. Much better with this one. Wow, look at that. Okay, so anybody that needs to connect to the Wi-Fi, I was actually told that I need to update this slide because I believe it says, what did you say it said?
No, it's actually fine.
Is this correct?
Scroll down.
Oh, okay. Space's guess is correct. All right. I was being fed misinformation. Right. Okay. Everybody have that? All right, good. All right. So first and foremost, I want to thank our sponsors. Bitcoinage is ordering us pizza for the evening. Thank you to them. And Orion, which is my company, and Sendine Spaces, which always offers us this wonderful space and does so for free. Okay, a little about me. My name is Mark Asalan. Most of you know me. I always kind of throw this slide out there just in the case that we haven't met before. I run Orion Innovations. We are a technology company that does a number of things in blockchain, AI, big data, data analytics. We have a lot of government agencies as our clients, as well as a lot of private industry. I am the Chief Technology Officer for a half dozen companies that I do work for. And if you want more information about me, just come on and visit me afterwards. Okay, so I wanted to give our sponsor the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. I wanted to introduce the president of Bitcoinage, Greg Lampkin.
Thank you, Mark. This is a great opportunity for us to present and to let you guys know what we do. We're basically an ICO right now, so we're not going to be collecting funds in the US, so relax. I'm not going to be asking anybody for money right now, just explaining to you our concept and what we do. This whole idea started with me years ago with the bank that I was working with, famous bank, Wells Fargo. I'm sure you've all have heard of it. Back then, I was having issues. I was having issues with overdrafts in my account, and it didn't make sense to me because I knew I was doing everything the right way, but still my account was still overdrafting. And I would go to the bank and I would try to explain to them, look, I'm doing this the right way, what's going on? And they would be like, yeah, you're the only one that has this issue. Nobody else in our bank has this issue. And it would drive me crazy because I knew it wasn't right. Something's not right here. And it's turned out years later that my bank, and I'm sure a whole lot of other banks, was basically caught by the government. And what they were doing was they were ordering transactions so that you would automatically overdraft. It was a $2 billion a year business for them. They were making tons of money by taking fees out of people's account. Small people, single mothers with 4 kids and trying to make ends meet, they would make you overdraft and take the money out of your account that you needed for food until your next paycheck. To me, that's the definition of evil. That's the definition of bad people. And when cryptocurrency came along for me, For me, it was an opportunity to leave the banking system, to finally see that there's a way to have justice for us. And it's what really gave me the idea for the concept that you saw the logo for Bitcoinage. And what Bitcoinage is essentially it's 3 independent companies. And each one of these companies has the stated goal of making it easy for people to get involved in cryptocurrency. Because cryptocurrency is the answer, I believe. But cryptocurrency has problems. And the problems with cryptocurrency is it's very difficult to get into. Think back to your first days when you were getting into it. You're trying to figure this out and you got money and you don't want to lose the money and you send it to the wrong address and it's gone magically and you're like, ugh. I mean, it was stressful, to say the least, for me when I got involved in the cryptocurrency. So I said, how can I make this easy for people? How can I make this easy for older people, they got problems with computers, and non-techie people? I mean, if you're here in this business, right now, if you're sitting here, you probably have some technical expertise. If you're involved in cryptocurrency, I mean, you probably have on some level, some degree of disposable income if you're involved in this. But that's not true of most people in America. It's not true of most people that really need this. So how can we, as an industry, make this available to more people? So this is what we're doing with Bitcoinage. 3 independent companies. Our first company is going to be what we're calling an arbitrage exchange. What's an arbitrage exchange? An arbitrage exchange is going to allow people to trade across exchanges. Right now, when you join an exchange, you're locked into that exchange. For many reasons, I don't have time to get into it because I only got 5 minutes. But what if you could trade across exchanges around the world? And you know that the price for Bitcoin and for many of the altcoins is different on different exchanges. Well, you could make more money on your trades. And this is what we want to do. We're creating an exchange that will be easy for people to use. If you've just come to Bitcoinage or you've just got involved in cryptocurrency, this exchange is going to be very simple for you to use. So people who have just gotten into cryptocurrency can make as much money as if they were a seasoned trader. So it's sort of like a very open door for them, a great opportunity, a great place for them to get involved in the cryptocurrency world. You just get involved in cryptocurrency and you can make money as if you were a seasoned trader because you're not just locked into one exchange. So that's the company we're working on now, setting up. The second company that we want to do is an educational portal. We want to teach people everything about cryptocurrency from A to Z. When you get involved in cryptocurrency, you sometimes don't know where to start. You don't know what you need to learn. You know you need to learn something, but you don't know what. Well, we want to solve that for people. They'll get involved with our educational portal, and we're going to offer them courses. Once you complete a course, we're going to give you cryptocurrency. Hasn't been decided yet. Maybe, 30 bucks worth of our coin, maybe 50 bucks worth of our coin that you can take and you can invest yourself and begin to learn to invest. Because again, remember, a lot of people that need to be in cryptocurrency don't have the money to get involved in cryptocurrency. And if we can give them a little something to get started, we believe that'll be incentive enough for them to get into this industry. So that's a very important part of what we're doing, the educational portal. The last company that we're doing is we want to offer people insurance on their personal holdings. So this is not insurance for companies, but it's insurance for individuals. So just imagine a world where you go to buy cryptocurrency at somewhere, anywhere on the planet, and you have an option to purchase insurance when you buy. Small price, $10.99, $20.99, whatever, purchase insurance for your cryptocurrency. It's a great idea. Cybersecurity? Okay, might need to talk to you. But peace of mind. One of the great things about a bank account is this peace of mind. When you get a bank account, you don't worry. You worry about working hard to put money in it, but once the money's in it, you don't worry anymore. This is what we have to offer people. We have to be able to offer people this in cryptocurrency if they're ever going to get to the point where they feel comfortable getting into this. We need to insure their assets. And we believe that this is multi-billion-dollar industry that needs to be created. Everybody knows it needs to be created, but nobody's doing it. Well, we're motivated to do it. We really believe there needs to be an alternative to our banking system around the world. And that's what our ICO is about. Probably toward the end of the month, we're going into our pre-ICO phase. We're going to begin to raise money, and we're going to put our ideas out there. We'll see who's interested. We'll see, what people think. But we have a pretty good suspicion that people are going to love what we're doing. And once we raise the funds that we need, we're going to be launching our concepts. And we don't want to do something little. We don't want to do something small. We want to kick this planet. We want to change the way things work because we only got so much time, and then the next generation does what they do. But while we're here, we're going to make a difference. We're going to change the lives of people, and that's what we believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Very cool. All right. So a couple quick things about the meetup. We are on social media. You're not going to find a whole lot of activity just yet. We're working on it. Eventually, we hope to do, much larger events, hackathons, etc. A lot of different things around blockchain. We're still working on those things. Okay, so I wanted to present James Whelan. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Alpha Point Technology. They're a publicly traded enterprise software company. He is a Hyperledger speaker and event organizer and blockchain advisor for several blockchain startups. And with that, we need to switch over. Sorry. Yeah. Too far along. Give me a second here. All right, we'll switch over to this.
Hello? Okay. So one of the things I do also is I'm an event organizer for Hyperledger. Hyperledger is not a blockchain. A lot of people talk about Hyperledger and they say, this blockchain, Hyperledger, whatever. Hyperledger is actually an organization. And underneath Hyperledger, it governs some open source blockchain projects. The first and flagship project was Fabric, and then came Composer that works with Fabric, and then there's some other projects like Quilt and Burrow. Okay. It's kind of modulating the volume. It started to go higher. You got it? It tries to, because my ears do that sometimes. So, where was I? So, this year, Hyperledger launched their new blockchain initiative, Sawtooth. And one of the reasons why I like giving the Sawtooth presentation is what they really did is they try to take all the really important concept of enterprise blockchain. Now, the difference between enterprise blockchain and cryptocurrencies and some of the other blockchain projects is that this really goes to solving a business problem, and most of the time it's about establishing a trust relationship or eliminating a third-party intermediary within businesses, or be able to track the provenance or the origin of this particular good, or the attribution, which is the source of where everything came from. For example, music, and somebody who produces that they're going to want to know where that song went and who tracked it, so it's not copied, and that money always goes back to the source. That's attribution. Finding out if your tomato is actually organic, that's provenance. So those are some of the key features or use cases within the enterprise blockchain. So it doesn't really focus on cryptocurrencies, but the trust relationship or the validation or the capability of audits within a blockchain. I do think, though, that a lot of these projects will inevitably incorporate token economics and cryptocurrencies, but the enterprise kind of comes at it from a different level. They want, when they're going to deploy a product, they're not going to think about, okay, how's this going to revolutionize something in 20 years? They want to be able to get a return on investment by solving a problem, by eliminating like a $20 million problem, getting an immediate ROI by charging a subscription fee to solve that problem. That's just how they look at it, and that's how they're going to fund it. But inevitably, they're building up blockchains, which will inevitably be a network that these cryptocurrencies, these tokens can ride on in the future. So I think it's just a different way of going about it, and this is kind of funding by you.
Let's do this.
Okay, should I turn it off?
No, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that.
Okay. Any feedback? Okay. So what I'm going to cover is the Sawtooth design motivations, the features, and I'm going to go over a few use cases, some actual companies that were working in the beta of the Sawtooth that were deploying applications that were creating use cases. And there's I'm going to send off the slides if anyone wants to look at the code base, some links to demos they could download, and some documentation on it. So some of the design motivations of Sawtooth is one thing I think is really, really powerful with enterprise is on-chain governance. And one of the key aspects of on-chain governance that I'll talk about with Sawtooth is the ability to change consensus algorithms on-chain, which means that you could go from some early stages of Byzantine fault tolerance to some type of Casper or some kind of a time-based, chip-based algorithm or whatever is going to happen in the future. You're not going to have to fork and restart back a Genesis block. Everything that they want to do, any kind of changes to the network, they believe should be done by on-chain governance, no matter what it is. So there'll never ever be a need to fork because everything is modular and everything can be changed through governance, not forking. They increase the transaction execution, and they establish multi-threading transactions. Support for Ethereum. They wanted to make sure, one thing they found originally when they did Fabric is they would go to a different enterprise and say, let me give you the advantages of doing our permission blockchain over Ethereum, for example. One of the problems with deployments was that they'd probably already done 6 months, 8 months of work building Solidity contracts for Ethereum, and they would say, well, we like your product, we like your blockchain, but so much invested in the Ethereum smart contracts, they didn't want to move forward. So one thing they did with Fabric is they brought on Burrow, which is a way to bring in Solidity into the Fabric, but within Sawtooth, they basically made their smart contract mechanism an EVM, a virtual machine, an Ethereum virtual machine, and I'll go over it a little bit more. So you could take an Ethereum smart contract, cut and paste it, and put it right into a Sawtooth, and you'd have the same structure. And dynamic consensus, I think, also goes with the on-chain governance. That's what I was talking about before. Is through the on-chain governance, they also want to have dynamic consensus. And if anybody knows what happened with the DAO and what happened with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, is that there was a war and there was a forking, and there's also going to be forks when it comes to time to do Casper. So all these changes, for example, I'll say Casper is a very, very good one for dynamic consensus, because if there was a situation in Sawtooth that, well, like Casper's coming, they're not going to have a hard fork. You know, they're never going to have to hard fork and go start from block 0, which is important because a lot of these enterprises want to keep all these transaction histories. They may have some kind of regulation that requires transactions be kept on chain for 7 years due to some kind of regulatory compliance. They may have to fork because maybe their transaction speed's too slow and the new consensus algorithm is faster. And this allows them to do both, keep it and go on chain and never have to deal with forking. Broad language support. One other thing that was important is that when people wanted, when Hyplerledger was trying to convince enterprises to do deployments, they the pushback a lot of times was they didn't want any kind of obscure programming language. They wanted to have Python, they want to have Java, they want to have all the different SCKs that they were familiar with, so that they could pull from their existing pool of programmers to deploy. So those were basically some of the principles. And these were some of the partners that Hyplerledger joined with to develop Sawtooth. Some of these are contributors for source code. Some of these were participants that deployed, were sponsors that created use cases on Sawtooth. Monax is actually, if you ever see the Burrow or the Ceph, the Ethereum virtual machine that deploys the Ethereum smart contract, that was brought in from Monax. So the basic element of the blockchain and the importance of the blockchain in enterprise is that it's a distributed ledger. That there's a database. Enterprise sees blockchain as the database that it can share between multiple people, and it can establish trust relationship. And basically, when you think of the blockchain as a database, it's basically transactions. Instead of like a SQL server that has different structures that do queries to get all the data, blockchain has an ordered list of transactions. And depending on your protocol or your blockchain, there's different sizes. Like, for example, there might be 1 megabyte size. So every time the list goes to 1 megabyte, it drops and creates a new block. Each one of those lists of transactions are encrypted with the 256 hash algorithm. Then they're all encrypted together in what's called a Merkle tree. And then each block is connected to another block, because on the one block, they have the complete hash algorithm of the block before. So if there's any kind of modification to any of the data, even the slightest little byte, every other block in the blockchain gets notified, the whole system collapses. Business default tolerance kicks in. They reject the malbehavior of that block, gets cut off from the rest of the herd. So why do they want to deploy this? Again, I talked about before is in business, the most important thing of business is establishing trust. And every time there's been a change in economics with society, there's been a new establishment of trust, whether it's from, going from caves to clans to villages to kingdoms to eventually creating a constitution. You've basically created a construct of trust. And each time these trust relationships have evolved, so has all the economics around it, and so has all the business around it. So what the blockchain enables you is to take mutually distrusted organizations that may have to be facilitated by a third-party facilitator, a third-party organization, a third-party auditor, and enables them to validate each other's database and know that each other's database is not being corrupted, and they can, through this validation, establish trust and eventually get rid of maybe the third-party validator and build better business relationships and more efficiencies, reduce costs. And I'll go over some examples of that later. Some other benefits of it is it's crash fault tolerant. You think if you have your database spread apart all over different enterprises multiple times, a few of them crash, it's not going to be a big deal. For if your GUI interface is pegging all these nodes, a few of them go down, it's not going to matter. There's not going to be any downtime, any denial of the service attacks. There's just way too many nodes to go down. So Byzantine fault tolerant, and I'll go over the Byzantine fault tolerance later, is basically the ability of the blockchain through its consensus algorithm to determine that if there's a bad actor. So the way that the algorithm communicates with each node is going to be able to identify and cut off who the bad actor is from that node. And so anybody who tries to manipulate a transaction, tries to hack into the code, the Byzantine fault tolerant is a piece of algorithm that will cut off that node. Liveliness is the ability to always do forward progression on state. So I don't know if you've ever had a database that you've gone, an application you've logged into, and everything seemed like it was working, but you went to go put in another value or change a value, and it just did nothing. You know, still seemed to function, still seemed to run. Liveliness is the always availability to change state, to forward progression on state changes, which sometimes fails in traditional database. It never fails within the blockchain. The downsides or the negative to blockchain is throughput, right? So because this database is shared and copied throughout the network, that's going to slow things down. I mean, it's all, if you think of it, you know, one database doesn't have to copy itself, so you don't have to wait for it. So centralized database is always going to be faster, and you know, improvements on algorithms are always happening, and there's different protocols that are doing things asynchronous. But right now, you're always going to have a faster solution with a centralized solution. But you know, that's not necessarily a big deal if you can solve a problem that doesn't require a certain speed of transaction. So why not? You have private transactions, okay? So you wouldn't want blockchain if there was information or transactions that you didn't want anybody else in the world to know about. Because the whole reason to have a blockchain is to share a node to establish trust, which means that information, at least, at minimum, needs to be one other person, probably two other people, to establish this validated trust relationship. So one mistake that a lot of people just say when they talk about enterprise blockchain or permissioned blockchain, which is a subset of it, is they call it a private blockchain. They'll say, oh, you know, Fabric or Sawtooth is a private blockchain. It's not, because private means that one person has it. So I always refer to it as a permissioned blockchain, not a private blockchain, because private means that it's pretty much useless, right? It's only one person. Just go get a MySQL server and drop all your information in, and nobody cares. So a wrong usage would be to have some kind of highly private financial information within one department that doesn't share it, you know, some kind of accounting feature that you don't want anybody to have your financials, and to put that in a blockchain would be a waste of use.
What about Monero and some of the mixers? There's some other blockchains that are pretty private in terms of content.
Right. Those are really, like, how they're structured is really currency is their application, right? So there's you could apply it to a transaction, and it's not a bad use case. Monero is though still a public, but it is more masks and could theoretically be a probably acceptable enterprise solution that you could be able to maybe share and easily hide certain information that you want to hide through some kind of transaction. But that's a good point. They haven't really marketed themselves that way, though.
The government thinks of them as a bad actor.
Yeah, well, of course, because they can't get their hooks in them. So they want to be able to, you know, they're worried about drug trade, money laundering, drug traffic, all types of good things. that. And one of the things people have done, you know, a lot of the new like Hashgraph, IOTA, they've created these asynchronous things, but I think early on, a lot of people try to like scale down how many validators, scale down how many times it's copied, but the more you scale it down, the more centralized you have your application, and the less you've, less value you have as a node, you know? And I would say that even if you had 3 or 4 people in a consortium, you still should have multiple validators within the consortium to take advantage of fault tolerance and Byzantine fault tolerance. This kind of just goes over, again, a little logo of the elements of the design. There's scale, making sure that as fast as a consensus algorithm that's available can always be deployed within the system. So they wanted to pick, they actually deployed one of the fastest algorithms for transaction called proof of elapsed time, which we'll cover. And they want to make sure that the ledger is distributed, that you're able to have a lot of nodes available, and ease of deployment. They wanted to make sure that the programming language were available to Java, Python, C++, all the common coding languages, or even Solidity for smart contracts has become almost standard. And they wanted to make sure smart contracts were safe to prevent hacking and DAO situations or mistakes of Ethereum have with Solidity. What they've added from some of the betas from early on is they've added parallel execution. So you're able to change state multiple times through multiple different processes. And we'll go some slides to show how through RESTful API servers and through different clients that different processes can change state. The only time where it stops is when if, you know, 2 processes are hitting the same state change at the same time, and then it's time-based. But other than that, there's parallel execution. Multi-language support. So we'll go over all the different programming languages that are available. On-chain government, consensus, dynamic consensus, and then it's got new permission featurings that allow proof of authority. So I always call permission Hyperledger, you know, proof of identity or staking your reputation. If you get identified as a bad actor, because you're known, you are going to be identified. Your reputation is going to be at stake. You're going to be kicked out of the consortium. You're no longer going to be able to do business with these people. So what you're staking is not electricity, but it's your reputation. And what you're proving is not the currency that you're staking, you're staking your reputation. Distributed applications. So they call their smart contract Seth. Okay, it's a play on Geth, but S is for Sawtooth and ETH is of course Ethereum, so Sawtooth Ethereum, and it basically runs the Solidity smart contract. And the use cases that they worked on were based off provenance of goods, supply chain, and telemetry and tracking. This is a basic concept of the structure of Sawtooth. You've got validator nodes that you can change state. The transaction processor is what they call the smart contract. It runs on Solidity, just like Ethereum, but they don't, in any of the literature, they never call it smart contracts. They call it transaction processors, which actually I think makes a lot more sense. And then the client that would be able to access all the validator nodes to change state. And as I said, could be multiple transaction processors, multiple clients, multiple validator nodes, all running parallel processing at the same time. And this is kind of a breakdown of the architecture and how they, when we talk about the on-chain governance and the ability to do dynamic consensus, the way that it breaks down is, oh, this isn't working. is they've structured everything really modular, right? So everything they try to make is really separate. So when a new consensus algorithm comes out, they just make some on-chain governance transactions. Say, for example, at block 3,429, go from this consensus algorithm to the next algorithm. So there's no need for forking. So they kind of try to separate everything. So when they upgrade the transaction processor, update everything, they can update everything modularly. So you don't have to fork when you have these massive upgrades. Talked about that a little bit already. And these are some of the multiple programming language APIs that we have available. You want to create a client to connect with the REST service. You can do it with the Python APIs, JavaScript, Go, Rust. Very, very common within the enterprise. The transaction processors, as well as doing Ethereum Solidity. You can also, they have modules that do it in JavaScript, Python, C++, Java. So you can still, if you didn't have Solidity programmers in there, you could still deploy your smart contracts, what they call transaction processors. You could do it with JavaScript, but it does allow for Solidity. Talk right there. And this goes over the Ethereum virtual machine and how it interacts with stuff. And you could use Truffle and Remix, and if anybody's ever deployed a Solidity in a smart contract, that's the most common interfaces to deploy. So it all hooks up within Sawtooth. Same as Ethereum. This is an example of an on-chain governance file that sits on a validator node. And this goes over the current consensus algorithms that you could choose from right today. So they have a dev mode. So when you're deploying it, you don't have to do a full-blown Byzantine, practical Byzantine fault tolerant. You can go to a dev mode. This is really, really fast. It's not going to be really doing anything, but it's good for development. And because you don't have to fork, you can start doing production stuff on dev and then switch over at leisure. One of the things that they came out with as far as consensus algorithms within Sawtooth is proof of elapsed time. That was developed by Intel, and right now only Intel processors, there's a specific SGX Intel Xeon that can perform that algorithm, consensus algorithm. Right now, you'll see that there's 2 PETs that are available. The difference is the first one you can run without Intel, but it doesn't do Byzantine fault tolerance in it. It's just standard fault tolerant algorithms. The SGX is the one that requires an Intel. A lot of people say, well, isn't that proprietary? Isn't it all supposed to be open source? Actually, the code and even the little hardware code for that is open source. So if AMD wanted to, it's freely available for them to take the source code, even on the chipset, is all open source. They could take it, put it in there. They just haven't done it yet. But it's new. If it takes off, it definitely will. And it allows for, it's a very, very fast consensus algorithm, and it uses a lot of it uses, almost ASIC size is the processing speed. And it adds time stamps to the consensus algorithms for Byzantine fault tolerant and assisting in the ordered list of pairs. Some examples of the use cases that were made during the trial period that came out with production. One of them was Active Ticket. Active Ticket is an application that wants to streamline the process of ticketing. So you don't have to go to like Ticketmaster to produce your ticket. You could just go to Active Ticket and start to deploy a whole ticketing scheme within, download the wallet, and then okay. You just download the wallet or put the wallet on your website, issue your tickets. And they basically, you think of the barcode as basically like a Bitcoin address, right? So it's not copyable. You can't copy it. It's all identified. It's all put on there just like a Bitcoin. So you're going to know who it is. It's going to be able to track who has it. If you can't just send it to somebody else or sell it to somebody else, because they'll know it's going to go from this wallet to this wallet. They'll be able to track it, right? So that's what they did. So it eliminates the double spend on ticketing, and there's greater accountability for reporting from the issuer of the ticket, other than going to the Ticketmaster. I think it's a pretty interesting use case. Wind River, they're doing a bunch of different things with Sawtooth, but they're actually building it into cars and medical devices, be able to communicate, for example, if there's weather conditions on the road or different elevators that are different speeds. So it's using the blockchain and Sawtooth to be able to communicate different devices with each other. And one of the use cases they did was they deployed it in one of the Ford cases where some of the cars were talking to each other and determining where they were on the road. And open music is, I think I talked about a little bit before, and that's what they really, their goal is to make it so that artists are always paid for their songs and their music. That's all right. So they want to make sure that is this me? Oh man, I thought I turned it off. I guess I didn't. So what Open Music Initiative is, they want to create a scenario where music creators are always paid for their music that they produce. So it's basically, one of the funny things is really the first distributed application was Napster that destroyed music, people be able to profit from music. But they're trying to take blockchain to solve that problem. And what they want to do is be able to take music and almost encrypt what you would think is like a Bitcoin address within the music, and have players that could only, the music files could only play on, so it could track everywhere the music was. And if you took the music and you try to put it in another player, you'd immediately be extracted funds from your coin-based wallet or something, So every time you would use it, even if you copied it, no matter what you would do, you'd have to pay for the use of the application, because it would all be tracked, it all had to be on a specific player. It was all, encrypted with its own transaction ID. So you know where it is, and they call that attribution, which means like even if it goes 7 different places in the future, the original person's going to know everywhere that the thing went. The opposite of provenance. Okay, and I just put some examples of use cases that you can actually download from the Hyplerledger website there's documentations on how to deploy it. You can create like a theoretical supply chain use case. You can create a theoretical marketplace. You can create, and then there's the development guides that go along with it. So there's pretty interesting. There's also some videos that go over it. So it's pretty educational as far as how enterprise kind of perceives how to use blockchain to solve problems. And that's pretty much sums it up.
Awesome, thank you so much. So does anyone have any questions about Hyplerledger Sawtooth?
Hyplerledger is a non-for-profit foundation. Okay, now I'll turn it on. Yeah, so Hyplerledger is a non-for-profit foundation. It's actually under the Linux Foundation. So first is Linux Foundation, and underneath the Linux Foundation is the Hyplerledger Foundation. They're both non-for-profit, and they serve just governance of open source. So they seek to establish community and to promote the benefits of blockchain, promote the benefits of enterprise blockchain specifically. So they're got donations, all the contributors like IBM, they got Intel, a lot of banks contribute to the foundation, and partners. Yes, we do. There is we have Hyperledger meetups in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach. The most active is Miami because we get a lot of demand and a lot of people. Yeah, so we get projects and they're in Miami and they don't want to leave. So I'll find so the difficulty about getting a lot of different projects to showcase is you know, anywhere outside Miami is a lot of them are based in Miami, and to get them up here is sometimes difficult. Yeah. They're like, why would we leave Miami? There's like 7 different meetups I could choose from that I met every day. So, you know, so I end up going down to Miami a lot. But I try to bring it up here as much as I can. I do meetups at General Provisions, and there's some meetups that happen in West Palm Beach that we do. And what we try to do is we try to showcase different companies, and we don't always use Hyperledger projects. We have it like a priority. Like we go, do one, can they be Hyperledger projects, right? If not, can they be enterprise? If not, let them not be scams, right? So, no, we don't do any ICOs. So if they're not enterprise, we want to make sure they're structured as a straight up security, or they're not doing any non-compliant funding. So we try to just, that's like our order, and then that's our cutoff.
Thank you guys. All right, so the rest of this meetup is typically reserved for questions, which we're kind of gone through, and otherwise networking, and there's still quite a bit of pizza back there, so please eat up. And thank you guys so much for coming.